After losing my parents and grandparents in a tragic accident, I found myself living with my stepdad and stepbrother. Inheriting a substantial fortune of over $4 million in assets, including a house and stocks, everything fell into my hands. However, my stepdad's attempts to steal it all led to drastic consequences. I left him homeless, stripped him of his license, and he lost his job. Before I turned 18, my father had passed away, and my mother remarried, bringing a stepbrother into my life around my age. My relationship with my stepdad wasn't ideal, but I kept quiet about it. Despite my mom's assurances of his kindness, I remained skeptical. Being a reserved person who avoids conflict, I often hid my true feelings and let things slide. My grandparents had amassed wealth through smart investments in stocks and real estate, totaling between $4 to $5 million. They also owned a $1 million house nearby. Our family was close-knit, and initially my stepdad seemed friendly and humble, earning acceptance from them. Claiming expertise in accounting, he started by assisting with basic tasks, leading to him managing their finances upon their retirement. Though I had reservations about his capabilities, I was young and didn't voice my concerns. My relationship with my stepbrother, Brian, was strained from the start. He was spoiled and often bullied my mom, further complicating our dynamic. Despite his father's attempts to help him academically, Brian struggled with poor grades, which contrasted sharply with the leniency he received compared to my own achievements. Seeking solace and wisdom, I spent more time with my sharp-minded grandparents, who offered invaluable advice on finances and life. Brian rarely visited them except to use their amenities and ask for money, never forming a real bond. While my relationship with my mother was once strong, her marriage changed things. I disagreed with my stepdad on many issues, but my mom's efforts to please him and gain Brian's acceptance shifted our dynamics. She constantly urged me to get along with him, convinced he was a good man, but my instincts told me otherwise. I saw through his facade, anticipating trouble ahead. Despite my efforts, my stepdad's manipulative behavior continued, alternating between moments of apparent support and periods of blatant neglect. As I entered my teenage years, our relationship deteriorated further, fueled by his subtle bullying and mocking comments, such as teasing me about not having a girlfriend. When I confided in my mom, she dismissed his behavior as concern, a sentiment I found hard to believe. When I turned 17, my grandparents decided to take a trip overseas, leaving me behind due to school commitments. My stepdad, citing work obligations and critical stock market conditions, also stayed home, claiming his responsibility extended beyond managing my grandparents' finances to other clients. Brian, left without my grandparents' authority, largely ignored me, enjoying his newfound freedom. Throughout their absence, I maintained contact with my family, albeit sporadically due to time zone differences and unreliable communication services. Despite my occasional anxieties, which often proved prescient, I could not reach them for 2 consecutive days, an unnerving break from our regular communication. Concerned, I approached my stepdad, who dismissed my fears as paranoia, assuring me they were simply traveling and would return soon. As the expected return date approached, my attempts to contact them intensified, met with unanswered calls and emails. Contacting the hotel where they were supposed to stay revealed they had checked out days ago, but I received no further details due to privacy policies. On the day they were due back, I was called to the principal's office during class, where I found my stepdad and Brian waiting. Confused and anxious, they informed me that a hospital had contacted my stepdad. It was devastating news. An accident had claimed the lives of my grandparents and mother. Shock and disbelief overwhelmed me as I struggled to comprehend the sudden loss of my entire family. The principal offered condolences and sent us home, but the day passed in a blur of grief and disbelief. Later, my stepdad gathered Brian and me, explaining that they had been en route to the airport when their vehicle collided with a truck. My grandparents died instantly, while my mother fought for hours in surgery before succumbing to her injuries. The tragedy was incomprehensible, leaving me grappling with an immense sense of loss and disbelief that persists to this day. Like anyone in my situation, I desperately wished I could turn back time, do something, anything, to change the outcome. I demanded to see my grandparents and mother, hoping against hope that there had been a mistake. My stepdad confirmed their identities. He had seen them himself. The wait for their return felt like an eternity. Some distant relatives offered support, but I hardly knew them, which provided little solace. Going through the motions of arranging funerals was agonizing. How often does someone have to bury 3 close family members? Despite the pain, they received dignified funerals, and I managed to say my goodbyes, although it tore me apart. School granted me a few weeks to grieve, during which I isolated myself. I couldn't understand why Brian was given time off. He had never been close to my mom or grandparents, but that seemed irrelevant in the face of our shared loss. Soon, the matter of their estate surfaced. My mother hadn't accumulated much. Her modest office job left behind only some savings after selling our house upon marriage. I hadn't expected anything from my grandparents, assuming their estate would benefit distant relatives or charities, given their philanthropic nature. To my surprise, the lawyers contacted me and my stepdad. It turned out their entire estate was equally split between my mother and me. However, in the event of one of our deaths, the survivor would inherit everything, and if both of us were deceased, the estate would go to charity. I was named the sole inheritor, but with a condition: I had to reach 18 years old before the assets could be transferred to my name, with my stepdad serving as my legal guardian in the interim. The lawyer's announcement that everything was left to me visibly displeased my stepdad. Our already strained relationship worsened. I was taken aback that my grandparents hadn't left him anything, despite entrusting him with their finances. Apparently, family ties mattered more than financial arrangements. After the lawyer left, I struggled to process the whirlwind of events. Now I owned the house and was several $1 million richer. Despite our past conflicts, my stepdad's demeanor toward me changed drastically. He checked in on me frequently, offered support, and encouraged me to confide in him. He warned against trusting our extended family, suggesting they might try to take advantage of my inheritance, assuring me he would protect me. Brian also attempted to befriend me, acting as if we were suddenly close, but I saw through their facades. I knew their intentions would soon become clear. During this tumultuous time, I cautiously engaged with my extended family, keeping them updated while navigating the complexities of grief and newfound wealth. Facing the prospect of inheriting a substantial amount of money, I sought advice from my uncles, which didn't sit well with my stepdad. His resistance prompted me to confront him about his reluctance to let me connect with my own family. His response was revealing. He insisted he was safeguarding my money and proposed I sign everything over to him once I turned 18, claiming I lacked financial savvy. His condescending attitude infuriated me. He even argued it would benefit me, allowing me to focus on college after high school, despite never showing genuine interest in my education. Instead, he had always favored his son, despite his academic shortcomings. I made it clear I wouldn't transfer control of my inheritance to him. He then resorted to guilt, claiming I owed him for housing and supporting me during my family's tragedy. I knew he was opportunistic, but I hadn't anticipated this level of manipulation. Our argument escalated, with both him and Brian ganging up on me, invoking guilt and my mother's memory to sway me. Despite their efforts, I stood my ground, but legally I couldn't reclaim control until I turned 18. The clause my grandparents had stipulated left everything temporarily in his hands. Over the next few months, he made my life difficult, leveraging his temporary control to unsettle me. His expertise in financial matters and psychological manipulation wore me down. His insinuations that I couldn't handle the responsibility of managing my grandparents' legacy haunted me, and I felt isolated, unable to confide in anyone. Home became toxic, but leaving seemed impossible until he crossed a line, threatening me. Fearing for my safety, I fled, seeking refuge with a friend until my 18th birthday. I ignored his calls and messages, learning later that he and Brian had moved into my grandparents' house. His threats to prevent me from accessing my inheritance intensified my anxiety. Despite my lack of legal knowledge, I reached out to my grandparents' lawyer, who had been informed of my situation earlier. Together, we initiated the process to transfer the estate to my name. However, my stepdad contested the will, making the transition challenging and fraught with legal battles. It all started when I made the decision to take legal action against him, aiming to reclaim my rightful inheritance. Following my parents' passing, he had pressured me into signing everything over to him, arguing that I was too young to manage such wealth. His defense rested on claims that he had responsibly handled the estate, but a thorough investigation into the accounts revealed a darker truth. He had been embezzling funds from my inheritance, funneling them into his own accounts under false pretenses. Not only had he breached the trust placed in him, but he had also allowed his son to benefit from my assets, splurging on luxuries that were never authorized. The court ruled in my favor, compelling him to return every cent he had unlawfully taken, in addition to covering all legal expenses incurred. The financial impact was severe. Forced to liquidate his home, car, and all possessions acquired through my funds, he faced the consequences of his actions. Furthermore, I expelled both him and his son from my grandparents' residence, severing all ties permanently. His professional reputation suffered too, as his license was suspended pending a disciplinary hearing. Now stripped of his home, job, and income, along with his son, he faces a bleak future. Meanwhile, I have chosen to focus solely on moving forward, cutting off all communication with them. The recent months have been tumultuous, but finally, things are beginning to settle down. Reflecting on it all, I often wonder if I was justified in cutting ties so abruptly, despite his previous care for me. There was a fleeting moment when I believed his intentions might have been genuine, before the truth emerged. Initially, following the news of my inheritance, he and his son suddenly turned solicitous, showering me with attention and assurances of care. Looking back, it becomes clear that their kindness was a facade motivated solely by the prospect of my newfound wealth. It was a stark reminder that even those who appear compassionate can harbor ulterior motives, especially when money is involved. I had harbored fears that he would misuse my inheritance before I came of age, yet in this instance, justice prevailed. The consequences of his actions were profound. Not only did he repay what he had taken, but he also suffered significant personal losses. His downfall serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the risks and challenges that accompany sudden wealth. Hopefully, all of this was a significant lesson for the op, helping them stay vigilant against future scammers. As for how I would have handled the situation and whether I'd be considered a jerk or not, I'm obese, comfortably needing 2 seats on a plane, aware of this, but preferring not to inconvenience others. Recently, flying solo to a conference, I purchased 2 seats to avoid encroaching on neighboring passengers, having previously endured uncomfortable flights with disapproving glances. Once seated, I lifted the armrest for comfort, when a couple having separated seats took the empty one next to me, confirming my fears. Despite my discomfort as my side touched the man next to me, even being nudged when he settled in, I politely requested he move to his assigned seat, bought for my comfort. He refused, insisting the seat was empty and he wanted to sit with his girlfriend. I reiterated my discomfort and ownership of the seat, but he continued chatting with her. Quietly notifying a flight attendant, she intervened, requesting the man vacate my second seat, which he and his girlfriend did reluctantly, casting me disdainful glances. His girlfriend muttered an insult under her breath, confirming their lack of consideration. Was I wrong to insist he vacate? Given his attempt to push past my discomfort, he clearly understood the situation. I've seen videos where passengers purchase extra seats for children, and airlines sometimes force them to share a seat. I initially feared a similar outcome, but the flight attendant supported my right to both seats, highlighting the couple's rudeness. Had they explained their situation kindly, I might have considered it, but their initial rudeness justified my actions. If faced with this, how would you have handled it?